tonight.
If we don't control COVID-19, that gives the virus opportunities for new mutations to arise.
As vaccinations are on the rise, so are infection rates, the latest on the pandemic. And while some businesses pull back, threats to boycott those that don't.
Georgians and all Americans should know what this decision means. Cancel culture and partisan activists are coming for your business.
Fallout from Georgia's new elections law, plus how something called qualified immunity is used to protect police from prosecution, even if they violate civil rights laws. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Could vaccinations prevent a third wave of COVID cases? Hi, everyone. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder. Well, there is a debate tonight over whether the United States will face another big influx of coronavirus cases. While some experts say it's on its way, others think an uptick in vaccinations will prevent a surge. But that doesn't necessarily mean the country is in the clear. Paul Strand has our top story.
Good news, the White House COVID response team says the pace of 3 million vaccinations a day is picking up, and so is the percentage of Americans vaccinated.
Over the weekend, there were more than 4 million recorded vaccinations in a single day for the first time. As of today, nearly 1 in 3 Americans and over 40% of adults have at least one shot.
18.5% of the population is now fully vaccinated. The death rate is slowly going down, averaging around 800 a day. Still, infections are up about 7% the past week, with hospitalizations increasing 3%. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky says more young adults are getting the virus, mostly due to variants, the latest being a double mutant variant first found in the San Francisco Bay Area, possibly originating in India. With more than 6 million people flying over the Easter holiday, could these mutations and variants spread more widely? Some flyers aren't scared.
Wore my mask the entire trip, followed all the guidelines, did what they told me to do, and I feel pretty safe.
But if flying does spread the virus, things could get worse. As one United pilot told me, United Airlines is letting all its pilots know to expect nothing but jam flights in the weeks ahead.
If you have unvaccinated people mingling, I do worry about another surge. That's what we've seen after every holiday.
If you do fly and need a rental car, you may find price gouging or nothing available.
The car rental companies sold off their inventories when a year ago, no one was leaving their homes. And now that demand is coming back, they simply just can't get cars quick enough.
Leading to things like charges of up to $1,000 a day in Hawaii. But we won't call that a crisis, given we still are fighting a pandemic.
The worst thing we could do right now would be to mistake progress for victory. If we let our guard down now, we will see more of our fellow Americans get sick and die unnecessarily.
I understand that people are tired and that they are ready for this pandemic to be over, as am I. Please continue to hang in there and to continue to do the things that we know prevent the spread of the virus.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
All right, thank you, Paul. Meanwhile, the firestorm in Georgia that has everyone talking is heating up tonight. On Capitol Hill, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is striking back at organizations moving or threatening to move out of Georgia over the state's new election law. Many Democrats call the legislation discriminatory voter suppression. President Biden says it's worse than Jim Crow laws. And now some are threatening to boycott businesses based in Georgia, like Coke and Delta. It's affecting the sports world, too. Major League Baseball announcing it's relocating its All-Star game and MLB draft out of the state. Today, McConnell said the backlash to the election law is a result of, quote, absurd disinformation meant to bully and mislead the American people.
It is easier to vote in Georgia after the new law than it is in Delaware now, the president's home state. And I found it completely discouraging to find a bunch of corporate CEOs getting in the middle of politics. My advice to the corporate CEOs of America is to stay out of politics. Don't pick sides in these big fights. And the other thing I think is important is for the truth to be told.
And joining us now is Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Tony, welcome. So the Washington Post gave President Biden 4 Pinocchios for some of his comments about this new Georgia voting law. Your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I was surprised that the Washington Post did that, but it was well-deserved. The president has been misleading the American public on this law. Look, Jenna, there's one of two things that's happened here. The left, in their deceptive and unhinged response, A, is either willfully ignorant of the law, refusing to read the bill that's less than 100 pages, or they have bigger plans here on corrupting America's election system. And I'm concerned that it's the latter.
The situation in Georgia is stoking another conversation, Tony, about the role of race in America. Charles Barkley had this to say about how politicians are causing a racial divide. Let's listen to that, and then we'll get your reaction.
I think most white people and black people are great people. I really believe that in my heart. But I think our system is set up where our politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, are designed to make us not like each other so they can keep their grasp of money and power. They divide and conquer. Hey, let's make these people not like each other. We don't live in their neighborhoods. We all got money. Let's make the whites and blacks not like each other. Let's make rich people and poor people not like each other. Let's scramble the middle class.
So, Tony, what do you think? Are politicians to blame for the division in our country?
Well, I would say he's actually onto something, because I do think what he just laid out is the tactics of Marxists and those on the left who want to divide and create class warfare and pit citizens against one another. That is not necessarily happening from the Republican Party, which, by the way, is making great inroads, as we saw in the last election, with minority communities. I think it's more of the left, the Democratic Party, that is fearful they'll lose their core constituency, and so they have to pit them against the rest of society. But these election laws are absolutely critical that we get this right. And what's happening now is you have like 38 states that are moving forward with reform measures as a result of the constitutional irregularities that took place in the November election. This is how our system works. And that's what has Joe Biden and the left fearful, is that our system will in fact correct what was done wrong in the November election, and that would not be good for them and their political future.
So in Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson has vetoed legislation that would have banned treatments or surgery for transgender youth. At the same time, Tony, he also recently signed a measure allowing doctors to refuse treating someone if they have moral obligations. Your thoughts, and does this newest veto come as a surprise to you at all?
It doesn't necessarily come as a surprise. I spoke to the governor over the weekend, talking with him about the legislation. Again, we see corporate America, I think, leaning in on this. Walmart is in Arkansas, and they've become very aggressive in their political agenda for the left. So not totally surprised, disappointed, but not totally surprised. But here's the bottom line. It's not over. The legislature has more than enough votes to override his veto, and he is frequently overridden by the legislature. So I am very optimistic that the citizens of Arkansas will speak to their legislators in the next day or so and encourage them to do the right thing and override this veto.
All right, Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Good to have you with us this Monday. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Coming up, how the Biden administration is pushing its massive infrastructure plan. You're watching CBN's Faith Nation. We'll be right back with that story and more after this.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep. as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Rebuilding American infrastructure is a top priority for the Biden administration. The president's more than $2 trillion plan was released last week, and now the White House is out trying to sell it to the American people and lawmakers across the aisle.
I'm having a lot of conversations with Republicans in the House and Senate who have been wanting to do something big on infrastructure for years. We may not agree about every piece of it, but this is one area where the American people absolutely want to see us get it done. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I don't think in the next 50 years we're going to see another time when we have this combination of a demonstrated need, bipartisan interest, widespread impatience, and a very supportive president.
And although there is general bipartisan support for rebuilding infrastructure, many Republicans disagree with the sweeping cost of this particular plan and how a lot of that money won't actually be spent on the crumbling infrastructure.
I've reached out to the White House a couple of times now and said, you've got an easy bipartisan win here if you'll keep this package narrowly focused on infrastructure, and then the other 70 or so percent of the package that doesn't have very much to do with infrastructure. If you want to force that in a partisan way, you could still do that. Why would you pass up the opportunity here to focus on roads, bridges, what's happening underground as well as above the ground in infrastructure?
And it's a good question. Here now to discuss, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, if some of this money in the president's infrastructure plan isn't going to infrastructure, where is it going?
Well, let's start with $400 billion that's going to take care of the elderly long term. And look, I don't think anybody's opposed to having the elderly being taken care of from a social safety net standpoint. But $400 billion in addition to the social safety net? And by the way, wait, let me think. I'm not the brightest guy in the room. Well, what does that have to do with infrastructure? And I think what we're seeing is if you go down the list in this bill, it's $2.2 trillion or so, possibly even higher. Only about 150 to 200 billion of it is actual infrastructure money for highways and schools and all transportation and all of that. So this is the problem. It's a real easy win, as Senator Roy Blunt just said. It's an easy win for Biden if he just sticks to infrastructure, but they're going much bigger than that in what they're calling the infrastructure bill.
Yeah. Secretary Buttigieg is right. This does have a lot of bipartisan support, or the issue does. And most Americans agree, too. It's something that they can get behind, rebuilding our country's infrastructure. That said, do you think the president will push through this massive plan without any Republican support? Do you think he can?
Well, let's be clear. The bipartisan support that Pete Buttigieg is talking about is for infrastructure only. That's what Republicans are okay with. Donald Trump was okay with that. He wanted to do an infrastructure bill. They never got there. So that's that $200 billion or so that if it was a standalone bill would be fine. The problem is that the bill is much larger than that, and this is where it's going to get into complications, and it won't pass with any Republican support. So therefore, the question, here we go again, we did this with the stimulus bill, we're about to do it again. Will Democrats go it alone? Will they be able to just take Democrats' votes, use budget reconciliation? We're going to find that out soon, and see if they can just pass with Democrat votes. If they can do that, they're on their way to passing another bill without any Republican support.
Yeah, to do that, they'll have to get people like Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona on board with them. And Joe Manchin, he said that he will not support part of the plan, and that part raising the corporate tax rate to 28%. David, how much power does Senator Manchin hold on this issue and on others as things move forward?
He's the power center. He holds all the power, Jenna. And so this idea of the 28%, he's not fond of. That means it'll go down to about 25, 24%. It'll go up, the corporate interest rate, but Manchin has a lot of power to keep it down a little bit.
During his campaign, David, now President Biden vowed to work with Republicans, saying he wanted to bring the country together and unify. When the latest COVID relief package passed, the president was able to sidestep GOP support, and that could be the case again with infrastructure. Where does the work together attitude we saw during where is that attitude? Just a few
non-existent. Yeah, it's non-existent. I will just say this, that the way the White House is going to spin this is that they're going to say, look, public opinion polls show that the majority, whether it be 51, 52%, are with Democrats on these issues, and that they consider bipartisan support. They consider unity. That's a very creative and unique way at looking at bipartisan support. It doesn't have any Republican support, but if they're going to go from the polls, that's what they consider unity. We'll see how that unity message plays out in 2022. It might come back to burn Democrats.
All right, we will see. David Brody, thank you very much. Good to have you with us.
Thanks, Jenna.
Well, is police brutality actually protected under the law? The little-known doctrine that shielded cops from prosecution. Next on Faith Nation.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Shoven continues this week. Today, the emergency room doctor who pronounced George Floyd dead took the stand. He believes Floyd's heart stopped due to a lack of oxygen to the brain.
That was one of the more likely possibilities. I felt that at the time, based on the information I had, it was more likely than the other possibilities.
And doctor, is there another name for death by oxygen deficiency?
Asphyxia is a commonly understood term.
As to why why Mr. Floyd's heart may have stopped.
And the prosecution was trying to establish that it was likely Chauvin's knee on Floyd's neck that killed him. Though during defense cross-examination, the doctor did testify that the use of some drugs could lead to hypoxia, which could also limit the oxygen to the brain. An unlawful shield for police. That is what the doctrine known as qualified immunity is being called. Why? Qualified immunity makes it extremely difficult to prosecute the police and nearly impossible to recover damages when civil rights are violated. Faith Nation anchor John Jessup explains.
Anger over the haunting images of the death of George Floyd sparked a worldwide movement. But there's another movement, though little known, gaining traction, marked not by images, but by two words many have never heard: qualified immunity.
If I understand correctly, it effectively acts as a shield. That's exactly right. And that's why we call qualified immunity an unlawful shield, because it is a shield for public officials who have committed constitutional violations to escape accountability for their actions.
When police use excessive force that may violate a person's rights, that person can try to recover damages by claiming a violation of civil rights. But increasingly, those claims are not even given their day in court because of the doctrine of qualified immunity and its widespread application in civil cases seeking police accountability. The law's origin comes from the Enforcement Act of 1871, designed to protect recently freed slaves after the Civil War. Over the years, a section of the law protecting public officials in the course of their work evolved into today's version of qualified immunity, a doctrine created by the Supreme Court. It essentially provides a shield of liability against civil lawsuits so long as the public official's conduct does not violate clearly established law.
The way it works in practice is that courts will require would-be civil rights plaintiffs to find a prior case already decided in their jurisdiction where someone else's rights were violated in essentially the same way.
And given no two cases are exactly the same,
qualified immunity routinely enables public officials, especially members of law enforcement, to get away with egregious misconduct just because they happen to be the first ones to commit that exact kind of misconduct.
For example, after being cleared of any wrongdoing, a Cleveland man filed a lawsuit alleging he was punched in the neck and jailed by police who never identified themselves but suspected he was breaking into his own apartment. A judge ruled because of qualified immunity, neither the police nor the city could be sued. And an appeals court in 2019 ruled two California police officers who allegedly stole over $220,000 while executing a warrant also couldn't be sued, simply because there's no legal precedent in that part of California.
What should happen when a
Schweikert isn't the only one drawing attention to the legal challenge. Last year, a Reuters investigation reviewed some 500 cases over 15 years and found a trend: courts denying victims the right to challenge violations of their constitutional rights, making it harder to win future cases against the police.
In speaking with law enforcement, I found a willingness to reconsider the unintended effects of qualified immunity, followed by a hesitation to end the principle, seen as essential so police can carry out their daily duties without the constant fear of lawsuits.
Captain Sonia Pruitt has served nearly 30 years with the Montgomery County, Maryland Police Department.
Black officers play a really vital role in policing. It is a noble profession.
As the head of the National Black Police Association, she says it's time to re-examine qualified immunity for law enforcement.
We would ask that any of the parameters surrounding qualified immunity be examined, because it could be a way for officers to feel like that they will get more leniency if they commit an act, a violation of misconduct in the line of duty.
Schweikert believes it not only thwarts justice, but works against the very men and women it's designed to protect.
I think that this doctrine is doing a tremendous disservice to members of law enforcement because it is depriving them of the public trust and credibility that they need to do their job safely and effectively.
And momentum for change is building. Among protesters honoring George Floyd, both liberal and conservative justices saying it's time to review the court's own solidified principle. and lawmakers introducing legislation to revoke the provision for gun-carrying officers in an effort to combat excessive force and police brutality. It's a rare issue of consensus across ideological lines seen recently on criminal justice reform. Nicole Porter witnessed the power of the faith community when she worked to advance the First Step Act.
In my work at the state level, faith communities are key in representing a base of constituents who are supportive of criminal justice reform and talking about restorative justice and other alternatives of punishment.
Many agree among the ways to honor George Floyd is to fix the broken system before it gets worse.
My hope is that if we are able to address that now and make a simple but massive change to eliminate this doctrine, I hope that will offer some small measure of redemption for the death of George Floyd and so many other people like him.
What's his name? George Floyd!
John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Wednesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Finally tonight, this weekend, Christians around the globe mark the death and resurrection of Christ. Today at the White House, President Biden spoke about the Easter holiday during the COVID pandemic.
Easter's a day of joy when we celebrate resurrection and renewal. But this year, we know many are still going without the familiar comforts of the season. The virus is not gone, and the second year in a row, most will be apart from their families, their friends, and the full congregation that fill us with so much joy. But the scripture tells us, joy cometh in the morning.
Indeed, it does. And as more Americans get vaccinated, the president said that the, quote, long for dawn is almost here. And we will leave it on that note this evening. Have a great night, everybody.